goes off on its own.
Pause. Okay. So the final Saturday and the final Friday that we had the lecture with Charles. Okay, it's fine. Stay there. When Charles was showing almost the clips of the person that I have chosen for my history presentation, he almost showed 4 to 5 clips, and I was thinking, oh dear Charles, please don't show it. I have toiled so hard for days. I was just clasping my hands and going down in my seat. So I thought, fine, I have to revamp the whole thing once again. But what I found was that it was a blessing in disguise, because what Charles showed was merely a few pages of an epic. So once I did my presentation all over again, I found, wow, there are parts that I haven't even explored. Okay, so as the famous poet Shelley had said, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Vivek started in the first place with Pete Docter, and I would like to end with John Lasseter. So the career of John Lasseter itself is a story, as I felt. First of all, he started his career getting a chance in the very prestigious Cal Arts in the first year of character animation program, under the mentorship of 2 great old men of the night, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. And he had a quite colorful career over there. He made 2 great films as a student, Lady and the Lamp in '79 and Nightmare in '80, and both of them won Student Academy Awards for animation, which we as students would be like on cloud 9 if you get it. And that, along with his portfolio, earned him a place at the most coveted Walt Disney Animation. So every story has got 3 parts: the introduction, the conflict, and the climax. So if that was the introduction, then this is the conflict. So as we all are very young, we always have this rebellious attitude within ourselves that we want to change everything. So when John, he saw Star Wars and Tron, he felt that computer graphics could do a lot in the field of animation. It could bring a renaissance in the whole field. He always had this thought that, what about we do traditional animation in CG background? So with that in mind, he had the story of Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild Things Are, which Charles showed the other day. He tried a pencil test of this thing, which came out pretty good, and that could be said as the first missing link between the 2D and the 3D realm. But his over-enthusiasm cut short his tenure in Walt Disney Animation Studios, because when he pitched the idea for the Brave Little Toaster, he was politely shown the doorway. Poor John. And he almost rose from ashes like a phoenix from that. In November 1983, when he was fired, he had a CG conference. He attended a CG conference of Ed Catmull, and there, Ed Catmull previously knew him, so Ed Catmull, he came to know that John was not in the service anymore. So he told, hey, how about you join us our new project, which is the Adventures of Andre and Wally B. And that was the first CG short that was ever done. So after that, they had the Scene Toy, which won the Academy Award for the best short animated short film. And at that time, it was Pixar. And after George Lucas had some acrimony issues regarding his divorce with his wife, Steve Jobs had bought the company. And so they had been doing some small ads on Listerine, Lifesavers, and Tropicana. And this is the time when they got the attention of Disney, and all this culminated into Pixar getting a 3-film contract of $26 million. So November 22nd, 1995, and the stakes were quite higher for the Pixar crew than anyone else, because if they missed that opportunity, they would go to ground zero. And if there was a hit, there will be completely a new dimension added to the 2D genre of movies. So at this crucial juncture, Toy Story, the first animated feature, wins the jackpot. And it grosses more than $350 million worldwide. So that's the story arc. So the main thing of John Lasseter's work is that he focuses on three things. Number one is the story. Number two is the story. And number three is also the story. Because that is the key. The key is to tell a great story with some memorable characters so that it stands there for ages and for all generations to cherish years after years. But what is the recipe of a good story? Well, number one is a character arc. So when we see Toy Story, Woody is the most prized possession of Andy. He is almost the best toy that Andy always favors. And at this point, when Andy has his birthday, comes a new entry from Buzz Lightyear, who is a bit megalomaniac, a bit boisterous, and he thinks that he is Buzz Lightyear. And of course, Andy likes this new toy. And our poor Woody, he thinks that his supremacy is at stake. So he feels that he would trap Buzz, and Andy could take him to Pizza Planet. But accidentally, that ends up in a big misfortune. Buzz falls outside the house of Andy, and all the toys, they think that Woody is a villain, and he tries to treacherously murder Buzz. He turns villains in everyone's eyes. And from this point, there is a change in Woody. He goes to save Buzz. They all end up in the house of a heinous kid whose name is Sid, and who is kind of like Dr. Frankenstein, who feels like he would experiment some sinister experimentations on his toys, blow them out. And during this time, both Woody and Buzz, they change. Buzz, the boisterous guy, he feels that he's not Buzz Lightyear. He's just a normal toy like any other. And Woody thinks that I know I cannot be Buzz. I cannot be as flamboyant as Buzz. He knows that Andy still loves him, but he tells Buzz, "You are any day better than me." And that's when his personality, it takes a 180 degree. And from there, they convince the other toys to help them out, and they reach home safely. The next selling feature of John Lasseter's stories, which I find, and Stephanie also said a few moments before, is pathos. Whenever I see these Radiator Springs, it reminds me of our Hastings Street, which was once very much happening, but right now it's a very sketchy part of downtown. Radiator Springs, they had their heyday when Interstate 40 was up and running. They had all the business booming in there, all the cars going there, and they had a very colorful life. But when the Interstate 40 was constructed, Route 66, it went to obscurity. The characters over there, they felt secluded and they were completely cut off from the rest of the world. They lost their identity. And this, I felt, was the pathos in the movie, which later was rejuvenated when Lightning McQueen, he won the trophy and everything was going back normal after that. Number 3. The best, this is one of the biggest part of John Lasseter's stories, which I feel is, like, we can relate to the stories and the characters. Because they have these emotions, they have these feelings, they have they go through various parts of life that we also go. Like, if we see Doc Hudson, what was the main thing that he went through. That is tragedy. A guy who wins Piston Cup 3 times consecutively, and then makes a crash, and then once again when he goes back to the track, no one knows him, and he could never go back to his limelight. We have simplicity, matter, a countryside tow truck who is very much unsophisticated and doesn't know how the life is outside, but he's innocent. He doesn't know like what to do, what is called formality. He doesn't know anything. He just treats everyone as friend and mixes with them very simply. We have hope. Luigi is another car who has a tire shop which was running when Route 66 was there. Radiator Springs was in full bloom, but when Interstate 40 was constructed, his tire shop closed. But the hope that I found over there, we are still open. That is the thing that I liked in him, that he always hopes that, okay, he knows in his heart that this place might not ever be going back to the normal as it was before. But he has this hope in his mind that, okay, might be one day we can go back to our old state. And then we have love between Lightning McQueen and Sally, just like any one of us. So that's the thing. The audience laugh with them, they cry with them, and in the end, if you are not a robot, everyone gets back home with satisfaction. That's all. And John Lasseter has always been an ardent follower of Walt Disney, as I've found, because the way Walt Disney himself told stories, Lasseter also tries to tell the story in the same way. And this is one more thing which I found. As Charles showed in one of our earlier classes, this example of plausible impossible was that if you pull the tail of the cow, the bell rings. It might hear very fantastic, but it's not. Because John Lasseter himself has always said that I quote him, it's all about creating a child's imagination but still sticking to logic. It might seem very crazy, like pulling a tail, how can the bell be rung? But if the spine is joined in a straight line, it can ring. So, when he made the film with Luxor Jr., the lamp sizes of the mother and the child were different, but the bulb sizes weren't. The logic that he was in favor of him was that, well, the lamps can grow because they are manufactured once, but the bulbs aren't because they're renewed and they're brought from shops, so they have the constant size. So that's plausible impossible for you. So he calls himself the logic police. All he means is that you can do whatever you want to do, but that doesn't mean that you can kill someone by staring at his eyes like Chuck Norris do. Okay. The next thing is the setting of the story. One more important thing. I quote Lasseter. He says, you can just pick up the story and move it to a different world with a different set of characters. There was this old story of Aesop, of the ant and the grasshopper. So he took the film and put it to the microcosmos of the bugs. Like they have their plight, they have their rebellion against oppression. These grasshoppers, they're very much outnumbered by these ants, but the ants felt like they were puny and they were always oppressed by these grasshoppers for food. So with Flick, in the end, as the leader, they stand together. They are united by solidarity, and they all revolt against the grasshoppers. This A Bug's Life of John Lasseter, his second movie, it takes us to the way the Pixar guys do their research. In 1996, there was this movie called Microcosmos. It was a French documentary, and it was the first time that they showed, in this French documentary, they showed how the microorganisms, they live in their own world. So they were quite the Pixar guys, they were quite inspired by this movie, and so what they did was that they had a video camera called the Bugcam. They named it Bugcam. So it was a small video camera, and it was mounted on Lego wheels, and it was fastened to a stick, and the stick was moved, and that revealed the bug's perspective. And what they were amazed to see was that the grasses, the whole flora, it creates a translucent canopy as if the bugs live under a stained glass ceiling, and that was magnificent. I would like to show two images. This was the one which I felt was quite amazing, because like going so much close to the microorganisms and taking their photos, it was quite amazing. And so was this one. And these were some parts of their reference that they took to make the movie more believable. And then we come back to our final salient feature of Lasseter's movies, which is technology. Remember, at this point, the technology is not everything, but still, as he has always been a big fan of 3D, even his wedding photos were 3D, so he uses this technology quite well. And what they do is that they challenge every time what they don't have at that point of time, but still they try to attain that, and with that they create newer dimensions, then open newer opportunities. And in this one, Bill Reeves was one of the technical directors of the movie of A Bug's Life. And the animators animated 4 to 5 groups of about 8 individual ants, and from there it was simulated in such a good way. Bill Reeves, by the way, he made the particle systems that we use in Maya right now. It was simulated in such a nice manner that no two ants had the same eye skin color or the height or the weight, and that was fabulous. And apart from that, in the movie, it was the first time that they used triplets, that is a subsurface scattering. It was, the programming was done by Ed Catmull, who is very awesome 3D genius. And Pixar guys, they have, under John Lasseter, they have always tried to make their disadvantage their strength. When they made the Toy Story, at the time 3D, the CG wasn't much was very juvenile, so everything that was rendered had a plastic look. So they thought, hey, if everything's looked plastic, we'll make our stories with toys. That's the best thing. Like, you know what your limitations are, but still you try to overcome with that limitation yourself. But technology is something which is ever growing. But what is more important, according to him, is the story once again. Before the release of Toy Story, John Lasseter and Steve Jobs, they were having a dinner, in which Steve Jobs said, and I quote, "John, you know, at Apple, when I make computers, what is the lifetime of the product? 2 years? 3 years at most. And then in about 5 years, they are like a doorstep. But if you do your job right, these films can last forever." It really doesn't matter what medium it is. It's 2D, it's 3D. The story is always the heart of the film. Characters come in and go, but if you cut the heart of the film, that is the story, the whole building collapses. When Walt Disney made the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it was the first animated feature in 2D. Years in and years out, they have entertained the broadest possible audience. It's because of the story. 95, when Toy Story came out, it added an extra dimension. Yeah, 2D became 3D, but it also opened a new horizon. But it's the same thing, the story. The medium only changed, nothing else. And that's where John Lasseter echoes the 2D wizard, Walt Disney. And I could like to say John Lasseter, he himself is a 3D wizard, because he was the one who brought in the Renaissance in the realm of 3D. He was the first one to make the 3D animated feature. And that's the way our animation wizards have been piling up treasure for us. So 2D and 3D, we're all brothers. Okay. So with that, I would like to show one small video and would like to say bye to everyone. And okay, let's go for it. Yeah, I hope it doesn't betray me this time. Charles, and with that, I will end the history presentation, and thanks to Charles for helping us know the history of ourselves, and hope one day Charles will teach our history to some other. That's it. Thank you.